Jana Vallabha Girdvaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girdvaradhari Jasodanandana Vrajjana Ranjana Jasodanandana Vrajjana Ranjana Samunatira Vanachari Samunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girdvaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girdvaradhari Jasodanandana Vrajjana Ranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Jaya Radha Madhava Prabhupada
Vishnu Paramahamsa Prema Srimad, His Divine Loving Grace, God, the Swami Srila Prabhupada, Ki, ISKCON, founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Vishnu Paramahamsa Prema Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada, Ananta Koti Vaishnava, Nama Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki, Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Shri Shri Radha Krishna Govinda Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Shri Mayapur Navadvip Dham Ki Shri Chaitra Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Ayodhya Dham Ki Ganga Maya Ki Jai Jamuna Maya Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai Harinam Sankirtan Yagya Ki Jai Hare Krishna Mahamantra Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande all words is simple devotees
Hare Krishna,
all words is simple
Hare
devotees all
Krishna.
words is Shri Shri Radha all words is Shri Shri Guru Gauranga Vaishnava.
Okay. So small class today. More
We had
everybody.
brahmachari class
Oh yeah.
yesterday. Was it today? Yesterday had a class.
You were hard. Just kidding. Anyways, so today we'll be reading from the glorious Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 24, chanting the song sung by Lord Shiva, and we'll be going over text 38 today. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya
Narayanam Namaskritya.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam
Devam Saraswatim Vyasam.
Tato Jayamudirayet
Jodaya Mudiraya.
Nasta Prayasva Bhadrishu
Nastapreshu Vadreshu.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Bhagavati Uttam Sloke
Bhagavate Uttama-shloke.
Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki.
Bhakti Bhavati Naishtaki.
Alright, text 38. Nama Ujja Ishatraya
Nama Urja Ishetraya.
Pataye Yagya Retase
Pataye Yagyaretase.
Tripti Daya Cha Jiva
Tripti Daya Cha Jivanam.
Nama Sarvarasatmane
Nama Sarvarasatmane.
Nama Ujja Ishatraya
Nama Urja Ishetraya.
Pataye Yagya Retase
Pataye Yagyaretase.
Tripti Daya Cha Jivanam
Tripti Daya Cha Jivanam.
Nama Sarvarasatmane
Nama Sarvarasatmane.
Nama Urja Ishetraya
Nama Urja Ishetraya.
Pataye Yagya Retase
Pataye Yagyaretase.
Tripti Daya Cha Jivanam
Tripti Daya Cha Jivanam.
Nama Sarvarasatmane.
Nama Sarvarasatmane.
Bolo.
Nama Urja Ishetraya.
Nama Urja Isatraya
Pataye Yagyaretase.
Pataye Yagya Retase
Tripti Daya Cha Jivanam.
Tripti Daya Cha Jivanam
Nama Sarvarasatmane.
Nama Sarvarasatmane
Nama Urja Ishetraya.
Nama Urja Isatraya Taye yogyare tase tripti daya cha jivanam nama sarvara satmane Namal Jai Satraya Pataye Yagya Retase Triti Daya Chajivanam Nama Sarvara Satmane. Alrighty, synonyms. Namaha.
Namaha.
I offer all obeisances unto you.
I offer all obeisances unto you.
Urje.
Urje.
Unto the provider of the Pitriloka.
Unto the provider of the Pitriloka.
Ishe.
Ishe.
The provider of all the demigods.
Provider of all the demigods.
Trayaha.
Traya.
Of the three Vedas.
Of the three Vedas.
Pataye.
Pataye.
Unto the master.
Unto the master.
Yogya.
Yogya.
Sacrifices.
Sacrifices.
Retase.
Retase.
Unto the predominating deity of the moon planet.
Unto the predominating deity of the moon planet.
Tripti Daya.
Tripti Daya.
Unto him who gives satisfaction to everyone.
Unto him who gives satisfaction to everyone.
Cha.
Cha.
Also.
Also.
Jivanam.
Jivanam.
Of the living entities.
Of the living entities.
Namaha.
Namaha.
I offer my obeisances.
I offer my obeisances.
Sarva Rasa Atmane.
Sarva Rasa Atmane.
Unto the all-pervading Supersoul.
All-pervading Supersoul.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. My Lord, you are the provider of the Pitralokas as well as the demigods. You are the predominating deity of the moon and the master of all three Vedas. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you because you are the original source of satisfaction for all living entities. Please repeat. My Lord.
My Lord.
You are the provider of the Pitralokas.
You are the provider of the Pitralokas.
As well as the demigods.
As well as the demigods.
You are the predominating deity of the moon.
You are the predominating deity of the moon.
And the master of all three Vedas.
The master of all three Vedas.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
Because you are the original source.
You are the original source
of satisfaction for all living entities.
Of satisfaction for all living entities.
Purport. When the living entity is born with this material world, especially as a human being, he has several obligations unto the demigods, unto the saintly persons, unto living entities in general. As enjoined in the Shastras, Devarshi Bhutapta Nranam Pitrinam. Thus, one has an obligation to one's forefathers, the previous hierarchy. Lord Shiva prays to Lord Aniruddha to give him strength so he can become free from all obligation to the Pittas, demigods, general living entities, and saintly persons, and completely engage himself in the devotional service of the Lord. As stated, Devashi Bhutapta Nirnam Pitrinam Nakin Karo Nayam Rinicha Rajan Sarvatmanaya Sharanam Sharanyam Gato Mukundam Parihritya Kartam. Bhagavatam 11:541. One becomes free from all obligations to the demigods, saintly persons, pittas, ancient forefathers, etc., if one is completely engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. Lord Shiva therefore prays to Lord Aniruddha to give him strength so that he can be free from such obligations and entirely engage in the Lord's service. Soma, or the predominating deity of the moon, is responsible for the living entity's ability to relish the taste of food through the tongue. Lord Shiva prays to Lord Aniruddha to give him strength so that he will not taste anything but the prasada of the Lord. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura has sung a verse indicating that the tongue is the most formidable enemy among all the senses. If one can control the tongue, he can easily control the other senses. The tongue can be controlled only by eating Krishna prasada offered to the deity. Lord Shiva's prayers to Lord Aniruddha is meant for this purpose. Tripti Daya. He prays the Lord Aniruddha to help him to be satisfied by eating only prasad offered to the Lord. Gyanaadhimarandhasya ginanjana salakaya chakshu ummilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamhayam Dadati Swabhadantikam. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandha Jagatpate Gopisa Gopaka Kanta Raha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sotrevi Pranamami Hari Pre Namostu Jivanandaya Dasaya Vanacharne Prabhupada Valvaya Snita Silavanone Agina Nuhandagram Nam Pasate Putatatmanam Gyana Guru Daya Chitta Harine Chaksisen Nama Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesh Sonabhari Pasatya Satarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyasa Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitinam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasai Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, within the purport to this verse, well, to begin with, the verse itself, Lord Shiva is glorifying the Lord, saying how he is the provider of the Pitralokas as well as the demigods. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you because you are the original source of satisfaction for all living entities. So here, Lord Shiva is pointing out that nobody is dependent from him. The demigods are not dependent, or our own satisfaction that we get is, not independent. We're not independent in any way, shape, or form. And Prabhupada starts to go into this more in the verse. And there's one verse specifically that he brought up within the purport. Bhagavatam 11:5-41, in which it says, O king, one who has given up all material duties and has taken full shelter of the lotus feet of Mukunda, who offers shelter to all, is not indebted to the demigods, great sages, ordinary living beings, relatives, friends, mankind, or even one's forefathers, one who has passed away, since all such classes of living entities are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. One who has surrendered to the Lord's service has no need to serve such personalities. So we see that the Lord is the main object of worship. We have no need to worship our ancestors or worship these demigods or so forth, because ultimately everything is coming through Krishna. Even in the Bhagavad Gita, we're reminded of this in 9:23, where Krishna says, those who are devotees of other gods and who worship them with faith actually worship only me, O son of Kunti, but they do so in a wrong way. Because although these different living entities, whether demigods or our ancestors, or even people in this material world that provide us with things, ultimately they're only acting as the vessel, or I'm gonna just go with vessel, in order to work for Krishna to work through. Krishna works through these different living entities to give us anything or to perform anything through them. So we have demigods that they give us rain. We have demigods that they give fire, they give air, so many of these different things. We have people in the material world, our family, they raise us and all that, because when you're a baby, you can't take care of yourself. You have to have someone to feed you, someone to keep you warm, someone to protect you from danger. So ultimately, this is all Krishna working through all these living entities. This is how he works through these living entities. So instead of going through and worshiping each individual person, we should just go straight for the Lord. Because when we worship each individual, it's like this common thing we hear constantly. It's like watering the leaves and missing the roots, when we could just water the roots and all the leaves and everything else flourishes. And actually, this comes from another verse within the Bhagavatam, 4:31-14, wherein it is stated, as pouring water on the root of a tree energizes the trunk, branches, twigs, and everything else, and as supplying food to the stomach enlivens the senses and limbs of the body, simply worshiping the Supreme Person of Godhead through devotional service automatically satisfies the demigods who are parts of the Supreme Personality. So right there, we're given another example. Oftentimes, we try to go about getting things in our own way. And it may not be that we go to the demigods or things like this, but we think, okay, if I work longer, harder hours, then that means I'll get this much money, which means I'll be able to afford this, which means this will happen, that'll happen. I'll be able to provide in this way or that way, or I'll be able to get provided for in such a way. Well, ultimately, we have no complete authority over that. We can endeavor, but it doesn't mean that we'll receive these things. Just like when one goes to the doctor, they may have a horrible disease and they may have to go through that type of surgery or something of that sort. But what may work for someone may not work for someone else. One person may be able to get through it and they are perfectly fine afterwards. Other people, they may end up dying at some point. It's not cookie cut where we can have everything perfect in such a way. Otherwise we'd all be able to get through different things all the same, no problem. This material body, sometimes we're born deformed, sometimes people aren't, sometimes people are born with certain allergies, certain different problems, other people aren't. Why is this? Why would God do this to someone? And this is based on our karma, ultimately. Our karma decides this. So, in general, in the material world, we have certain obligations, right? If you're born into a family, you're obligated to help them in some way. Growing up, maybe, your family's providing you a house and food to live in. You probably got chores you have to do. If you're past 18, you probably have to have a job to pay rent or something of the sort. So another thing that was mentioned in the purport to 11:541 that I thought was really significant in this matter was Prabhupada mentions when we wake up. Wait, no. Oops. Oh, okay. I guess that's true, huh? I didn't even think of that. Prabhupada's disciples. So it stated in the Bhagavad Gita, it states, Stena eva saha. One who does not reciprocate with the demigods by offering them sacrifice is stena, or a thief. Similarly, other living entities such as cows are providing us with innumerable delicious and nutritious foodstuff. When we wake up in the morning, our mind is refreshed by the sweet singing of birds, and on a hot day, we enjoy the cool shade and breeze of the forest trees. We're accepting service from innumerable living entities, and we are obligated to repay them. Apta means one's own family members to whom one is certainly obligated according to normal morality, and Nirnam means human society. Until one becomes a devotee of the Supreme Person of Godhead, one is certainly a product of his society. We receive mundane education, culture, tradition, and protection from the society in which we live, and thus we owe a great debt to society. Of course, our debt to society is not simply to the present order, but to all of our forefathers and ancestors who carefully preserved moral and social customs so that we, their descendants, could live peacefully. So we can see right there, even in this sense, if we take God out of the image, if we're not doing things for these other living entities, we're thieves. We're taking so much service from so many different people. We got the breeze from Vayu. We got the sun from Surya Dev. We got water from Varuna Dev. We have so many plants giving us food stuff, cows giving us milk, families raising us. So many different living entities are providing us service. And if we're not doing anything back, then we're thieves. But when one takes up to the devotional service of the Lord, they're not so obligated because they're going straight to the cause of the service, straight to who is behind all this, who is behind providing these different services to us. Because ultimately, nothing belongs to us. We come to this material world with nothing besides a material body that we've been gifted. But even this is controlled and dominated by demigods and different organisms and God himself, obviously. So when we take up to the devotional service of the Lord, we skip all these obligations because we're going straight to the head honcho of everything. Instead of serving all the servants, well, we do serve servants, but in the sense of serving them directly and exclusively versus keeping God in it, we get to serve God. And of course, when we serve God, we're serving everyone else. When we serve God, we become God-like in a sense because we're having that association with God. And by doing that, we're doing the greatest service because now we're emanating that love of God to everyone. We're giving God to other people. We're providing prasadam to other people, facilities to know who God is. And if someone isn't interested in God, we at least give them our deepest, sincere love and praise, which is so profound compared to just giving them something mundane. We get to help people come and skip over so many more lifetimes of being in complete darkness. They get to start up their devotional service through contact with the devotees, because this is where devotional service actually begins. Bhakti yoga can only be received by a bhakti yogi. And so we should focus on serving the Supreme Lord because there is no loss. In Srimad Bhagavatam 1.5.17, Narada Muni mentions that one who has forsaken his material occupations to engage in devotional service of the Lord may sometimes fall down while in the immature stage, yet there is no danger of his being unsuccessful. On the other hand, a non-devotee, though fully engaged in occupational duties, does not gain anything. So when we take up to this devotional service, what loss do we have? We're going straight to the provider of everything, the provider of all, the protector of all, and so forth. There's nothing to lose. Narada Muni mentions it here. Even if we fall down, there's no danger of being unsuccessful. We'll just pick up right where we left off. Even if we don't come to the perfect stage within this one lifetime, we'll pick up where we left off in this lifetime. And we'll be able to continue this service. So one simply has to focus on what is the goal in life. We know through Shastra, through the sadhus, and through the Guru that Krishna Bhakti and Krishna Prema are the goals in life. We see the problem and we find the solution. We see the problem is that we don't have Krishna Bhakti. We do not have Krishna Prema. When you have the problem and you could see the problem, you could properly go about a solution to the problem, whatever it is in life. But specifically knowing what the goal in life is and what the problem is, we can figure out the steps and solution to go about solving that problem. So we know I got no Krishna Bhakti, I got no Krishna Prema, I'm suffering within this material world because of it. So now what are the steps? Okay, now I know that there's authoritative text out there. I read the authoritative text. Maybe I started to associate with devotees and sadhus. Okay, now I'm starting to see, I'm reading these things. I have some questions. I ask the sadhus. They're able to help me understand what's being said here. And I'm able to see how it's applied. Okay, now I'm pretty sure this is the path. Let me find a teacher to teach me properly. This is the process. This is the process of how one could solve the problem, all material problems, any problem within the world spiritually. Because this is the essence. We need to find out how to go about solving this problem, because of this problem, all other problems flourish. If I don't have Krishna Bhakti, I don't have Krishna consciousness, now I'm living on the bodily platform. I'm living on the basis of eating, sleeping, mating, and fearing, of things constantly being taken away from me, of things constantly giving me pain, mentally, physically, or so many other things. I'm constantly going through this birth after birth, not knowing that, one, I'm eternal, and two, I'm not even from here. I'm not even supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be eternally serving Krishna. So when we find the problem, we can make the steps on how to come out of the problem. Otherwise, we remain in nescience, absolute nescience. And you continue to suffer because you do not know. You do not know what the goal is. You do not know how to go about solving these different problems we face because we don't know what the root other problems are. We're thinking, oh, wow, that person's so mean to me. He took away this or that. And oh my gosh, now I've got this problem, that problem, or if this person didn't tell this person that, then this wouldn't have happened, this, and that. So many excuses for why we're living in a miserable condition. We're focused on all these outer problems, but we're not seeing what's behind those problems, because these problems all root from another problem. And that problem is not having Krishna Prema, not having Krishna consciousness, not being in our original position as the supreme, not being the supreme dharma of being the servant of Krishna. So another thing that was mentioned within this verse is about how the tongue can be, once it's controlled, we can control everything else. So in Nectar of Instruction, verse 1, it is mentioned, a sober person who can tolerate the urge to speak, the mind's demands, the actions of anger, and the urges of the tongue, belly, and genitals, is qualified to make disciples all over the world. It's like a straight line. So if we could control the tongue, that means what are we intaking and what are we speaking about? The tongue has two, and it is to speak or vibrate, sound vibration. So the way to control it, as mentioned in the purport, is through Krishna Prasadam. And when we speak Krishna Katha, everything we have in our senses should be purified through learning how to divert them into Krishna service. If I'm here, I should hear Krishna Katha. If I'm a speak, I should speak Krishna Katha. If I'm a eat, it should be Krishna Prasadam. If I'm a see, it should be for the deities, for example. If I'm a touch, I should be hugging a devotee or something of this sort. We can figure out how to control all these senses by learning how to engage them in the service, not for our own gratification, but as a byproduct of our service. Because we naturally have senses. This is the symptom of a soul, is it has senses, but in our conditioned state, they're contaminated and we're focused on trying to gratify them all the time. Whereas in the spiritual state, they're always connected to the Lord. There's no separation. It's always connected with the Lord in some way or another. And this is where a lot of spiritualists go wrong, is they try to negate the fact that they have senses. They try to zone out on everything. There's no form, so I shouldn't really focus on any type of sight. I shouldn't really focus on anything I'm hearing. I should care about what I'm eating. It should just be whatever food, maybe the most blandest of food, you know. I should live just super austere. But this is not necessary. This is not necessary because this is the wrong understanding. If one could just simply have it dovetailed into Krishna and in his service, then naturally these things will get gratified on their own. A lot of these people that they try to negate these senses eventually fall into the senses again. How many times have we seen great spiritualists that are supposed to be practicing brahmacharya, but they end up having illicit sex all the time, sometimes with minors or other people like that? Or how many times do we see that they end up doing intoxications of all kinds? they end up falling down generally in one way or another because they haven't learned how to properly engage their senses in the service of the Lord. So I think this is probably a good spot to stop. My apologies. I thought I had this class a little bit better prepared, but if anybody has any questions or comments or would like to add anything, yeah.
You're mentioning if one should speak about Krishna. If one is to see, they should see the deities and so on. It might be a lot easier for, say, like a brahmachari living in a temple. How can, say, grihasta or a sudra living outside the temple, control their senses as well?
Well, they need to keep in mind that the work that they're doing is ultimately for the service to Krishna and the grand scheme of things. You're going to work so that you have the money to be able to live in a house that, generally you probably have deities in, or that way you have a house that you can make prasad or, bhoga to serve to Krishna. You have the ability to chant within a home, and you don't have all these other things that you have to focus on so badly. Like if you're homeless, it's a whole nother story, a lot harder. You got to focus on what are you going to eat that day. Oh, it's hot outside, so where can I go? Whereas if you have a house, you're able to not worry about so many of these outer things. So they just need to engage in the duty with the thought of who am I doing this for? What am I doing this for? Because that's what separates a karmi and a devotee. Is a karmi is doing it for their own sense gratification. They just want to have the best thing, this, that. I'm working to get the money for that purpose. Whereas a devotee, they're working in a way that it's to serve Krishna ultimately. And it's just keeping that mentality. I think Kirtan has something to say with that.
There's an important thing to note about that verse, the Vachavegam verse, is that it doesn't say, the Vachavegam verse, but the next verse, Atyahara Prayasyascha Prajalpa Niyamagraha, that the word Prajalpa, which is, like Prabhupada translates, is unnecessary. So sometimes sometimes devotees get this thing in their mind that we have to be talking about Krishna's pastimes 100% of the time, and we can't talk about any practical matters. So like, depending on your service, you might have to talk about various, practical matters, but those are necessary to talk about. So it's not that it's prajalpa. Prajalpa is essentially when you're talking about unnecessary things unnecessarily. And so a sudra or a grihasta, it just might have to deal with the mode of passion more. Like Arjuna wasn't, meditating on Govardhan Leela while he was, killing the people in the battle, Kurukshetra. He was killing the people. But the idea is that he, like Gauranga Prema Prabhu said, he's thinking of Krishna, he's doing it for Krishna. So Krishna says, Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu, mamanusmaram yudhyacha, maya pritamana buddhir, mame vishashisham shayaha. He says, just perform the prescribed duty of fighting while at the same time think of me in the form of Krishna. With your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without doubt. So we have to just realize that there's unnecessary speech and there's necessary speech. And also, sometimes, for like homeless people, it could be harder, but then some of the greatest sadhus don't have, Rupa and Sanatan didn't have a home or didn't think about what they were going to eat that day. So, for someone who's on that platform of Paramahamsa, they just sleep under a different tree every day. And Vrindavan is hotter than here, so, they still manage to make it work. Yeah.
No, I think that Prajalpa point was really good point. Even for like loving exchanges, we see that Prabhupada sometimes would talk about seemingly mundane things with people just to have that loving exchange. Not that he like excessively talks about it with everyone or everything, but sometimes what would seemingly be mundane is necessary for different means. Like Kirtaneswar was saying.
One thing that is ultimately mundane is gossip.
Mm.
Gossip is so mundane. So we find that when devotees are constantly just spewing about other devotees, this is really detrimental. And actually, Lord Chaitanya says to Bhatta Raghunath Goswami, that's one of Lord Chaitanya's instructions to him: don't gossip. People in the renounced order of life sometimes have a tendency to gossip more than those who are not. So we don't got anything better to do we? So, anyhow.
That's a good point. All right. Well, I think that's it, unless y'all have any more comments or questions. All right. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai. Very nice class.
Thank you. I thought I had that a lot. Very